Now, welcome to another edition of Battle of the Heroes and Villains, where this time we'll be taking a look at the results of the poll for Djarin, also known as the Mandalorian. We'll then compare those results to all the other characters we've done thus far to see where he ranks, before I then read and respond to some of your comments. But before all that, you can already head down and nominate and or vote for which character we do next. Just respond to my pinned comment below with a character name, or vote with a thumbs up if the one you'd like to see is already listed. Whatever single comment gets the most votes in the next 24 hours or so will be the winner and the character we do next. Alright, and now on to the results for Djarin, where we'll see that 68% of voters gave him an A, 26% said he belonged in the B tier, 5% gave him a C, which left 1% to give him a D, and a final 1% to give him an F. And so when we do all the math and consider A a score of 5 and F a score of 1, Djarin ends up with an average score of 4.59, which puts him into 8th place overall, and a little ways ahead of characters such as Ahsoka Tano and Luke Skywalker. He's also the first character to finish anywhere near this high in quite some time, and I'm a little surprised it took so long to get him nominated, especially again when you consider just how well he ended up doing here. And though rather obviously we can tell from the results that many are more than happy with where he finished, there are certainly those who disagreed with these results, and we'll get to some of those comments a bit later. But first, before we get started here, let me once again say thank you to everyone who votes, comments, and watches the videos. It is all greatly appreciated. And now let's kick things off, as we always do, with the top-rated comment, which this time came to us from Mac Welch, who said, "When he says goodbye to Grogu, he doesn't care who sees his face as he cries. That was emotional." And yeah, I do agree that was a fantastic moment, and just an all-around amazing ending to Season 2 of the show for so many reasons. It was such a roller coaster of emotions, really. And it's impressive and a testament to the job done building the relationship that the goodbye between Djarin and Grogu isn't just completely eclipsed by not only the arrival of Luke Skywalker, but the awesome manner by which he arrived by tearing his way through the Dark Troopers. And that then leads to this set of comments, starting with this one from Todd Anderson, who said, "Solid character. It is his relationship with Grogu and his development from disenchanted killer to unlikely hero that makes him compelling. It'll be exciting to see where his story goes next." Then also this comment from Shinigami Maraku, who said, "To be fair, he is the main character, so naturally he's going to get a lot of development, but it's handled in such an interesting way that actually lets his character grow naturally, is to be applauded." Next up, this one from Abraham Schumann, who said, "The moment he decides to take his helmet off in front of others in the Imperial cafeteria is honestly one of the most powerful moments in all of Star Wars for me. His character earned that moment." And there were, I don't want to say a lot, but a good amount of people who sort of argued against Djarin and his character development in the comments, and I will get to some of those in a bit. But I honestly think, though certainly not the most complex character or story ever, that there was beauty in the simplicity of it all, and maybe it was a nice change of pace to get a smaller, simpler story that primarily just focused on this relationship between a child and his essentially adoptive father and the dangers they faced. That not everything needs to have Game of Thrones level complexity and intrigue or number of characters and intricate story threads in order to be a good story, though that sort of thing can be obviously fantastic. That sometimes a story can just be a story in and of itself, yet be thoroughly entertaining for what it is. Though all that said, I do think as the seasons go on, we will get a larger, more complex story from this series, from The Mandalorian, hence the number of new characters and story threads in Season 2 over Season 1. Plus the announcement of more shows linked to it that will all culminate in some sort of event, as we were told. But all in all here, simple character and or story or not, I think there was a good, believable evolution for Djarin, that they sold us on the idea of a guy who wouldn't take his helmet off in the presence of anyone for any reason because of his beliefs that were drilled into him from a very young age, though maybe deep down he wanted to. He wanted to have more sort of a real and personal connection with people, as highlighted in the 4th episode of Season 1, where we hear the emotion in his voice when he's being asked to stay in the village, where we can hear he wants to stay. And that then takes us to the moment where he does take off the helmet for the first time in front of IG-11, justifying it by him being a droid and not being alive, which we can certainly buy since we know he hates droids, thanks to what happened to him when he was young during the Clone Wars. Yet at the same time, that moment also showed him trusting a droid, or getting over that hatred to some extent, and him growing as a character. And then we have that moment that was mentioned in the Imperial base in the mess hall where he has to make this split-second decision to either take off the helmet to hopefully find and eventually rescue Grogu, or to leave it on to stay true to his ways and beliefs and likely never get a chance to find him. And he of course makes the decision to take it off, which then leads to and culminates with that moment at the very end where he takes his helmet off to let his son essentially see his face before saying goodbye. And he doesn't care who else sees his face in this moment. He doesn't care that people are literally going to see tears in his eyes. Alright, and moving on, we have this comment here from Blockbuster Studios who said, I feel that Season 1 Din was his own character, his own person. I feel that Season 2 Din was shafted to the side to bring in other characters like Boba and Ahsoka. Solid B. And I do see your point and sort of agree. I do think Season 2 was a bit of a springboard to other shows by bringing in some fan favorite characters that were going to lead those shows. But I don't think Din Djarin or the heart of the show ever got lost in all of it, which, as I said before, is impressive. It definitely multitasked pretty well, Season 2 I mean, with being, again, the simple story about a father and his son, and yet also setting up much bigger things down the road with Thrawn, the Darksaber, and so on. Okay, and next up then we have this comment from Infinite Donuts who said, so much character is developed despite how little he says. Then this one from John Arsene who said, built on a framework of subtle expressions through body language and voice, incredibly well developed and carries the show no matter what character might make a cameo. Also this one from Nick Perez who said, when you can't even see a character's face but they somehow manage to connect with you, you know it's an A character. Then this one from Jonathan Anderson who said, it's amazing how his character is developed and shows emotion so well for a character who wears a helmet 99% of the time. And also this one from Quinaz Martinez who said, when you can develop a character and portray his emotions without even showing his face other than a few times, that's called A-tier material. And there were a lot of people in the comments that brought this up, how much we seem to be able to take away from just the performance since Din Djarin really doesn't say much and rarely ever takes off the helmet. And I absolutely do agree that Pedro Pascal, who by no means is the only one to wear the suit and helmet, but no doubt does a majority of the, let's say, acting in it, if not the action, that he does a fantastic job with just subtle movements of the head or posture or whatever else it might be, and I don't want to take absolutely anything away from him or that performance. However, I do wonder if, in an odd sort of way, it's somehow a benefit to the character, that since we don't see his face, we then project emotions onto him somehow, the ones we feel would be most accurate, and thus it helps us connect with him. And mind you, I don't know if that makes any sense or if this is a thing, but I can't help but think of a movie like Castaway with Wilson, who, if you haven't seen the movie, he was just a volleyball with a bloody handprint, and it looked like a face that Tom Hanks's character talks to like it's a real person, and eventually we start to feel something for this quote-unquote character too. And again, I'm not trying to take anything away from the performance, and I do think it's amazing what they managed to achieve with a character that says little and wears a helmet most of the time, but I do wonder if this is a thing. I know humans like to see faces in everything, so maybe it's linked to that somehow. And if you know what I'm talking about, if this is some sort of thing, by all means, do enlighten me in the comments below. Alright, and next up here we have this comment from Sheev who said, overrated character. His sudden change of heart to care for Grogu was so forced and not organic at all. As basic and run-of-the-mill as you can get. Generic backstory, generic character, C. Then also this one from Leeb109 who said, for some reason Din Djarin manages to be the least interesting character in every scene. Or this one from R.E. Peters who said, most of this is coming from Mando hype and lack of good content we've been getting. Then there's also this one from Imankoi who said, the grading bar was lowered so low by the sequel trilogy, it's an easy A for anything good that came after. Also we had this one from The Wanderer who said, people rate him A because his show was the first decent Star Wars after the dumpster fire of the sequels. Taken on his own though, he is a mediocre character at best, a great homage to the gunslinger and Ronin archetypes that inspired Star Wars, but only interesting because of the supporting characters around him. He does have some good one-liners though, B for me. And there were, again, I don't want to say a lot, but certainly a fair share of comments like these, comments more critical of the character or why he was rated so high, which generally doesn't happen to a character who ends up rated so high. Usually there's pretty much consensus across the board, and then a few outliers that disagree and voice that in the comments. And yeah, I do think The Mandalorian, the show, and maybe the character benefited to some degree from a lot of people being disappointed by the sequels and just looking for and wanting any good Star Wars again to latch onto. Certainly, if the sequels had been considered fantastic almost universally among the fanbase, The Mandalorian probably doesn't get quite the same level of hype and attention. Or heck, maybe it gets even more since people would be riding such a high after the sequels. Who knows? Either way though, a live action show on a streaming service is still a completely new format for Star Wars all around, so in at least some capacity or respect, it doesn't directly relate to what the sequels were or weren't. This is its own new thing, and I do think many judge it that way. The fact that so many people who didn't like the sequels like this is maybe evidence of that they're not going to let the bad taste left in their mouth from the sequels ruin their enjoyment of this. So in a way, you could almost argue the opposite is true. But all that said, yeah, I do think you can make the argument that Din Djarin is not the best, most complex or fleshed out character there has ever been, or that there is in Star Wars. He may become that, and we could even say he's well on his way to becoming that now that it seems like his story is about to get a lot more intriguing since he has the Darksaber, and technically he's the leader of the Mandalorians right now. But I still think he worked extremely well for the type of story or series he was in those first 2 seasons, and that there is well done and earned development for the character. Alright, and next up then we have this comment from Bucks fan who said, "People need to show a little restraint. How can you put him with Palpatine, Anakin, Ahsoka, Luke, Vader, etc.?" There was also then this comment from Jessica A, which was great, but perhaps a touch on the long side to read, but feel free to pause the video and read it in its entirety. But she basically went on to explain what was so great about the character, before then also basically pointing out that no, he's not exactly on the same level as some other characters just yet. Which I do agree with. I don't think Din Djarin should be in the same bracket or tier as, say, an Obi-Wan Kenobi, yet at the same time, under this format or this format of poll that I do, I think we can agree both deserve to be rated as an A, as the best option. Which, no, doesn't sound like it makes sense, but hopefully you get what I'm saying, that this format has its limits. I do only get to have 5 options on these YouTube polls after all. And so, since many have touched on this issue, I have thought about conducting the polls elsewhere on a different site that lets me have as many options as I want, so that it can be a lot more nuanced, if you will, if the voting could be more nuanced. Problem with that is I'd likely only get a fraction of the votes that I get here on YouTube. So I've also thought about running them at the same time, 2 polls in different places for the same character essentially. One in this usual spot here on YouTube with the normal options, but then one on another site, which I'd link to on the first poll, where people could have more options about just where and how exactly to rank a character. All I know is I love doing these polls and have highly enjoyed this particular series. It's become a mainstay on the channel, and I hope to do this indefinitely and to, as I've talked about before, re-rank certain characters as they appear in more content down the road. So I'll just throw the question out there of what do you think is the best way for me to continue to do these polls? But for now, let's get to just a few final comments before wrapping this up, starting with this one from Alana A, who said, "He needs to take a Mandalore history class, but that's it." Then this one from Corey Eats Detroit, who said, "For a character that we have just recently come to know, I say that he's one that most people love or at least really like. He has had a unique and interesting story arc so far and still has a lot of room to grow. He doesn't feel like Boba Fett 2.0. He is his own person, A for me." Also had this comment from Derek Martinez, who said, "Probably my favorite Star Wars character alongside Obi-Wan and Yoda." Next, this one from George Watkins, who said, "I've never wanted to be anything other than a Jedi. Din Djarin makes me want to be a Mandalorian." Also this one from Grimzilla, who said, "The hero we needed when we were at our darkest moment in the franchise. Spoilers aside, Season 2's ending is the most moving finale I've seen. Din and Grogu carried that scene to cinematic perfection." Then there's this comment from Hendrik, who said, "After being the main character of a show that gave him plenty of development, he, while not being perfectly written, deserves to be an A." Also got a comment here from Pressed Easy, who said, "His character development is off the charts, and he is probably the reason we are getting all the new Star Wars shows." And finally, this comment from Manatee Man, who said, "There is definitely going to be so much more added to Din Djarin's character, and honestly, he has the potential to become a legendary character like Luke. Easy A." Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think of Din Djarin, or what you think of I, or what anyone else had to say about him here in this video. Or you can also feel free to let me know what you think is the best way to conduct these polls, or you can always just nominate and or vote for which character we do next. Whatever the case may be, do leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.